The printer in the girls' dormitory began screaming at 2:13 in the morning, and every page that slid out of it had my handwriting on it. That was not possible because my laptop was closed, my phone was face down beside my pillow, and in my first life I had died 8 years after that night with my name still listed in the Halewick Academy Disciplinary Archive as the girl who distributed stolen examination material. But there it was again. The dorm printer coughing warm paper into the blue dark, my neat headings, my color-coded summaries, my little stars beside the topics I thought mattered, my name stamped in the footer because I had once been stupid enough to make my notes easy for everyone to trust. I sat upright so fast my blanket slid to the floor. Across the room, my roommate Nadia muttered in her sleep and turned her face toward the wall. The printer did not stop. Page after page landed in the tray with a dry slap. Contract law, administrative procedure, ethics, evidence, public policy. The same study notes I had shared with the entire senior cohort in my first life, the same notes that had been praised, copied, forwarded, rewritten, sold, and finally used to destroy me. I climbed out of bed barefoot, cold biting my soles through the thin carpet, and walked toward the machine while the old panic rose in my chest like floodwater. On the top page, under the heading Week 9 Revision Map, someone had added one line in red ink that had not been there before. Share before sunrise, or they will call you selfish. I knew that sentence. I knew the voice behind it. Elodie Vane had texted it to me the morning everything began falling apart, the morning she convinced the cohort that my private notes belonged to everyone because I was the scholarship girl, because the academy paid my fees, because helping them was the least I could do. In my first life, I sent the folder at 6 a.m. to prove I was kind. By noon, my notes had been merged with a banned archive from the previous year. By exam day, half the cohort had memorized contaminated material under my name. By graduation, Elodie stood on stage as valedictorian while I stood outside the locked gates with an expulsion letter folded in my pocket. This time, I picked up the warm stack, tore the first page slowly across my name, and whispered into the humming room, "No." At breakfast, everyone was waiting for me to behave like the old version of myself. That was the worst part of coming back. Not the terror, not the impossible knowledge of what had already happened, but the way the world held out yesterday's mask and expected me to put it on without flinching. The cafeteria smelled of burnt toast, instant coffee, and floor cleaner. Senior candidates sat in clusters under the glass roof, pretending to revise while watching the entrance for me. In my first life, this was the hour I became useful. I had walked in with dark circles under my eyes and a thumb drive in my blazer pocket, and Elodie had risen from the center table with that soft, grateful smile that made teachers trust her and girls compete to stand near her. She was beautiful in an almost exhausting way, polished even at 7 in the morning, hair ribbon tied perfectly, collar flat, gold merit pin shining over her heart. Beside her sat the rivals who had always called themselves my friends when they needed something. Tessa with her expensive pens, Maribel with her fake tears, Lena who laughed at every cruel joke only after checking who else was laughing. Their notebooks were open but blank. Their tablets were charged, but untouched. They had not studied because they were waiting for me to feed them. Elodie lifted one hand the moment she saw me. "Mara," she called, "honey sweet. You look tired. We saved you a seat." In the first life, I had been grateful for that seat. I thought being included meant being loved. I crossed the cafeteria now and stopped beside their table without sitting. Elodie tapped the space next to her. "We were just saying we should make one final shared folder before the closed campus period starts. Your notes have always been the backbone for everyone." Tessa sighed dramatically. "Some of us can't write like you. You know how you make everything sound simple." Maribel leaned forward. "Please, Mara. The final ranking decides internships. Nobody wants to fall behind because we didn't organize properly." The trap was familiar enough to look harmless. Praise first, need second, guilt third. Then the word everyone, as if my work had been public property since the moment I wrote it. I placed my tray down, not in the empty seat, but at the edge of the table where everyone could see my hands. Then I opened my academy portal, projected my file permissions to the table screen, and clicked one button. Revoke cohort access. The system asked for confirmation. I pressed yes. Every girl at the table watched the shared note folder vanish from their devices at once. One by one, their screens flashed gray. Access removed by owner. It was a tiny, soundless execution. Elodie stopped smiling for the length of one heartbeat, and that one heartbeat was enough to show me the girl underneath. "That's not funny," Lena said, laughing because she thought laughter could shove the world back into its usual shape. "Put it back." I picked up my coffee, took one sip, and burned my tongue so badly my eyes watered. It helped. Pain was proof. Pain meant I was not a ghost wandering the same humiliation in circles. "I'm not sharing my personal notes this term," I said. "Use the official syllabus, the recorded lectures, and your own work." Tessa's mouth opened, as if I had insulted her family. Maribel blinked quickly, preparing tears like weapons. Elodie lowered her voice, the way she always did before turning cruelty into concern. "Mara, you're overwhelmed. We understand. But this is not the moment to isolate yourself. Last year, the review board said private hoarding was one of the reasons cohorts underperformed. We need collaboration." I almost laughed. Last year. There it was, the word sitting between us like a loaded gun. In my first life, last year became the blade. The Academy had a sealed misconduct case involving a leaked set of examiner annotations from the previous final. The material was not publicly available. It contained old question clusters, model phrases, and internal marking comments. Students called it the Amber File because the scanned pages had a yellow tint, and possession of it meant automatic disqualification. I had never seen the Amber File before Elodie merged pieces of it into my shared notes and then told everyone the complete folder came from me. The phrases were subtle enough to look like polished study summaries, but distinctive enough for the integrity software to catch. Balanced proportionality test with civic residue. Administrative reliance under emergency discretion.
Clové proof exception.
Nobody normal wrote like that. I certainly didn't. But because the contaminated file carried my footer and my formatting, because my original folder had been open for the cohort to copy, because I had no access logs saved and no spine left to accuse the golden girl of lying, the Academy decided I was the source. This time, while Elodie spoke about collaboration, I slid a printed form from my blazer pocket and placed it in front of her. It was my resignation as volunteer cohort note coordinator, stamped by Academic Affairs at 6:42 that morning. The cafeteria noise seemed to drop through the floor. Elodie read the stamp twice. "You filed this already?" she asked. I smiled, small and tired and calm. Before breakfast, the first pattern broke before lunch. In my old life, after I shared the notes, everyone became sweet for 3 days. They brought me tea. They sent heart emojis. They called me a lifesaver. This time, kindness never came. By second period, the group chat had renamed me from Mara Ainsley to Mara the Martyr. By third period, someone taped a paper crown to my locker with the words Queen of Hoarding written in gold marker. By afternoon, the class monitor announced a community study initiative without using my name, then looked directly at me while saying no candidate should sabotage group success through personal insecurity. What none of them knew was that I had spent the morning doing exactly what I should have done the first time. I downloaded my access logs. I printed permission histories. I took screenshots of every demand, every insult, every message that called my notes communal property. I visited Ms. Wren, the deputy registrar, during her office hour and handed her a sealed envelope labeled prior misconduct concern. I did not accuse Elodie directly. That had failed once. Instead, I told the truth in the smallest possible shape. Last cycle, there were rumors about banned archived notes circulating before the final. If any file appears under my name after today's timestamp, it was not shared by me. I have revoked access and resigned as note coordinator. Please preserve my folder history. Ms. Wren looked over her glasses at me for so long, I thought she might dismiss me. She was a severe woman with silver hair and the exhausted eyes of someone who had read too many student excuses to believe in coincidence. "Why now?" she asked. In my first life, that question would have frightened me into babbling. This time, I let silence do some of the work. Then I said, because people are angry that I stopped giving them work they didn't earn, and angry people forge things. Her expression changed by almost nothing, but she reached for the envelope with both hands. "Do not discuss this with your peers," she said. "If you receive any copied or altered material, forward it to this address only." She wrote an internal integrity email on a blue sticky note and slid it across the desk. The sticky note looked ridiculous, almost childish, but I carried it back to class like a shield. That evening, Elodie came to my room with cupcakes. Pattern disruption number 2. In my first life, she had come with tears. Tears worked on me then. She cried about pressure, about her father, about how everyone expected her to be perfect, about how my notes were the only reason she could breathe. I gave her my thumb drive before she even finished sobbing. This time, she came with sugar instead. Nadia opened the door because I was on the floor sorting my current syllabus pages into piles. Confirmed, revised, removed, examiner emphasis. Elodie stepped in wearing a cream cardigan, holding a little bakery box tied with twine. Behind her stood Tessa and Maribel, smiling too brightly. "Peace offering," Elodie said. "We don't want drama."
I did not stand.
"Then don't make any." The room chilled by 5 degrees. Nadia, who had never liked Elodie but had feared her too much to say so, leaned against her desk and watched with wide, curious eyes. Elodie placed the box on my bed as if claiming land. "Mara, we're worried. People are saying you reported the cohort." "Did they say that before or after they called me selfish?" Tessa crossed her arms. "You made everyone panic. The final is in 6 days. Then everyone should study." Maribel's tears arrived on schedule, 2 perfect drops clinging to her lower lashes. "Some of us don't have your memory." I looked at her and remembered her voice in my first life, sharp and cold outside the hearing room. If she didn't want blame, she shouldn't have put her name on the file. I picked up the bakery box and handed it back to Elodie. "I don't eat things I didn't ask for." It was a rude sentence. Maybe the first truly rude sentence I had ever said to her. Nadia made a choking noise that might have been a laugh. Elodie's face stayed gentle, but her fingers tightened around the box until the cardboard bent. "Fine," she said softly. "If you want to study alone, study alone. Just don't regret it when the rest of us find another way." There it was. Not a threat, exactly. A promise wearing perfume. When she left, Nadia locked the door, turned to me, and whispered, "What did you do to her?" I looked at the syllabus spread around me, at the empty place on my bed where the cupcakes had been, and said, "I stopped being convenient." The 3rd day was when the Amber file began breathing again. It did not arrive as a file named Amber, of course. It came disguised as Salvation. At 11:06 p.m., a new private chat appeared on my phone. Last lap revision, created by Elodie Vane. I did not join it, but Nadia did because she owed me curiosity and had a talent for pretending to be harmless. She sat beside me on the floor eating dry cereal from the box while messages flooded in. "Elodie, since some people withdrew support, I found a senior resource." "Tessa, you're saving us." "Lena, is it reliable?" "Elodie, it was prepared by last year's top scorer before the Academy changed the format. Use carefully.
Don't forward outside this chat."
Maribel, should we worry about rules? Elodie, it's not banned if we rewrite it in our own words. Nadia turned her screen toward me, and for a moment my lungs forgot their job. The preview image showed a yellowed PDF page with the phrase I had seen in my nightmares for years: civic residue. My first instinct was not triumph. It was terror. The body remembers ruin faster than the mind remembers plans. I was back in the hearing room, hands sweating into my skirt, 3 committee members asking why my notes contained examiner-only language, Elodie sitting behind me with red eyes and a tissue, whispering that she trusted me, that everyone trusted me, that I must have been tricked by someone else. I pressed my palm to the floor until the carpet fibers scratched my skin. Then I forced myself to breathe. This time, the file was not in my folder. This time, my access was revoked. This time, Nadia's screen was recording. "Don't respond," I said. Nadia nodded. All humor gone. Elodie posted again. "For safety, memorize concepts, not exact wording. But if certain phrases appear, they are high yield." She attached a list. Balanced proportionality with civic residue.
Clové proof exception.
Emergency discretion ladder. Administrative reliance under silent review. There they were, the fingerprints of the banned archive, glowing in a chat full of desperate students who wanted shortcuts more than truth. Forward it to Ms. Wren, I whispered. Nadia hesitated. All of it. All of it. The send button made no sound. That was the strange thing about justice. Sometimes it arrived silently, as one forwarded message landing in the right inbox, while 100 guilty hearts kept typing. By Friday, the school had split into 2 countries. In one country, Elodie was a queen. Her table grew larger every day. Students leaned over her tablet, whispered through lunch, copied diagrams onto flashcards, and spoke in the feverish little phrases of people who believed they had found a secret door through a locked wall. They stopped mocking me openly because they no longer needed me. That almost hurt more. Their relief was so visible. Mara had been replaced. Mara could be ignored again. In the other country, which consisted of me, Nadia, and sometimes a quiet boy named Rowan who had once returned my dropped pen without making eye contact, we studied the current materials like ordinary fools. We attended consultation sessions. We checked revised learning outcomes. We built answers from principles rather than memorized gold. It was slower, uglier, less glamorous. My notes were no longer beautiful. They were messy and brutal, full of crossed-out assumptions, arrows, and warnings. Do not use old formula. 2024 case removed. Examiner hates phrase, public interest balance without facts. One afternoon, Rowan sat across from us in the library and stared at my handwritten page, as if it were a map to a foreign country.
Can I ask something? He said.
I tensed automatically. If you ask for copies, no. He shook his head.
No.
I just want to know how you decided what not to study. It was the first honest study question anyone had asked me in 2 lives. I explained the current syllabus audit, the examiner memo, the lecture emphasis, and how old notes could poison an answer by making you solve last year's problem in this year's language. Rowan listened without grabbing, without flattering, without trying to turn my work into a communal resource. At the end, he said, "Thanks. I won't ask for the notes." Then he left. Nadia watched him go and raised an eyebrow. Is this what healthy academic interaction looks like? Apparently, I said, and for the first time since returning, I laughed without bitterness. The exam was not the first trap. That was the twist nobody saw coming. On the Monday before finals, the Academy announced a mandatory pre-exam integrity declaration. Every candidate had to report to Hall A, place all study materials used in the previous 72 hours into a scanning tray, and sign a statement confirming no banned archives, leaked annotations, purchased answer sets, or unauthorized senior files had been accessed. The cohort panicked in waves. You could feel it move through the corridors before you heard it. The sudden silence after the announcement, then doors opening, chairs scraping, footsteps rushing, messages buzzing like insects trapped behind glass. Elodie's group gathered under the west staircase, pale and furious. I watched from the balcony with Nadia beside me, pretending to read. Tessa whispered so loudly her voice carried upward. You said it wasn't banned. Elodie snapped back. It isn't if nobody submits it. Lena looked sick. They said materials used. My flashcards are copied from it. Maribel clutched her phone. Can we just not bring them? Elodie did not answer immediately, and that silence was more revealing than any confession. In my first life, the integrity declaration had not happened. The Academy only investigated after exam scripts matched the Amber file. This time, because I had reported early and Nadia had forwarded the chat, they were setting a net before the fish reached the water. But the net was clever. It did not accuse. It asked students to tell the truth voluntarily. Those who had made an honest mistake could surrender material and withdraw before sitting. Those who chose to lie would attach their own signatures to the fraud. I felt no sudden rush of joy. I thought I would. I had imagined revenge as heat, as fireworks, as some glorious music swelling when villains finally trembled. Instead, I felt cold and strangely sad because the easiest door out of ruin was standing wide open, and I already knew most of them would refuse to walk through it. Elodie found me in the laundry room that night. Another pattern broken. She did not bring cupcakes, tears, or witnesses. She came alone, which meant she was afraid enough to stop performing. I was folding my plain white shirts on top of a dryer when the door clicked shut behind her. The machines thumped around us, heavy wet rhythms like distant drums. She leaned against the door, arms folded, the golden merit pin missing from her blazer for once. Without it, she looked younger, almost ordinary. "You reported the file," she said. I folded another shirt. "I reported that banned files might circulate." "Don't play saint." Her voice cracked on the last word. "You knew what would happen." I looked up. I knew what happened when I didn't protect myself. For a moment, something like recognition flashed across her face, as if some part of her could sense the life we had already lived. Then it vanished under anger. "Do you know how much pressure I'm under? My mother already told the trustees I'm finishing first. My father promised the internship director I would rank. If I fall now, they won't ask what happened. They'll ask why I let someone like you beat me. Someone like you." There it was, the truth no apology had ever hidden. I placed the folded shirt on the stack. "Then study honestly." She laughed once, sharp and ugly. "Don't be naive. Nobody at the top is honest. They just hide it better." In my first life, that sentence would have shaken me because I still believed success meant goodness. In this life, it only made me tired. If you surrender the file tomorrow and withdraw from the exam cycle, you might keep your place at the academy. Elodie stared at me as if I had slapped her. "You want me to kneel? I want you to stop digging." "No," she whispered. "You want to take everything." I thought of my expulsion letter, my revoked scholarship, the internship I never reached, my mother selling her wedding bangles to pay legal fees while people online called me cheat, thief, cautionary tale. I thought of Elodie on stage, voice trembling beautifully as she dedicated her success to perseverance. "I don't have to take anything," I said. "You're carrying it into the hall yourself." She opened the door so hard it hit the wall, then walked out without another word. A sock fell from the dryer and landed at my feet. I picked it up and finished folding. The integrity scan began at 8 on Tuesday morning, and it looked more like airport security than academic review. Hall A had been stripped of banners and flowers. Long tables lined the entrance, each with a tray, a scanner, a camera, and an administrator wearing gloves. A sign above the doors read Materials Declaration. Honest disclosure protects candidates. Students shuffled forward clutching binders, tablets, notebooks, flashcards, lucky pens, and the fragile belief that rules were things that happened to other people. I carried one folder. My current syllabus map, my handwritten practice essays, and the blue sticky note Ms. Wren had given me, now folded into a pocket for courage. When my turn came, the administrator checked my candidate card, scanned my materials, and paused when the system opened my file history. My stomach tightened despite everything. Then the screen flashed green. No archive match. Permissions revoked prior to flag date. Declaration accepted. The administrator handed my folder back and said, "Proceed to the waiting area." For ordinary words. I nearly cried. Behind me, Nadia passed too. Rowan passed after surrendering a photocopied case summary he had borrowed from the library, which was cleared in 30 seconds. Then came the first crack from Elodie's country. Lena stepped to the table with a stack of flashcards wrapped in a rubber band. The scanner beeped twice, then turned amber. An administrator lifted one card with tweezers. I could not read it from where I sat, but I saw Lena's face collapse. Another staff member approached. They spoke quietly. Lena began crying. Not Maribel's pretty weaponized tears, but real frightened tears that made her shoulders shake. She pointed toward the west side of the hall, toward Elodie. Tessa went next and tried to surrender nothing. The scanner checked her phone history under the Declaration app, found downloaded images, and locked her account. Maribel fainted before her tray was processed. Someone shouted that this was entrapment. Someone else shouted that they had been told the file was safe. Through it all, Elodie stood near the entrance with her chin raised, holding a slim white binder against her chest, waiting as if elegance could repel evidence. When Elodie reached the table, the hall became so quiet I heard the scanner fan humming. She smiled at the administrator, placed her binder in the tray, and said, "I only used my own materials." That was her final mistake. Not the banned file. Not the secret chat. Not the pressure campaign. That sentence. "I only used my own materials." The administrator scanned the binder.
Green.
Elodie's smile deepened. Then Ms. Wren stepped forward from behind the second table, holding a tablet. "Candidate Vane, please unlock your declaration device." Elodie's lashes flickered. "My phone died." Ms. Wren held out a charging cable. "We can wait." The hall did not breathe. Elodie connected the phone. The screen came alive, bright as accusation. Ms. Wren tapped once, twice, then opened the app log. "You deleted a private chat at 7:14 this morning." Elodie looked wounded. "People send me things all the time. I can't control that." "You were the administrator of the chat. For study support, you attached a file matching the Academy's sealed amber archive." "I didn't know it was sealed." Ms. Wren's voice remained calm, but something in it hardened. At 11:19 p.m. last Wednesday, after a candidate asked whether the material violated rules, you wrote, "It's not banned if we rewrite it." At 11:23 p.m., you highlighted 4 phrases that appear in examiner-only annotations from the prior misconduct case. At 11:31 p.m., you instructed members not to forward the file outside the chat. "Would you like to amend your declaration?" The trapdoor opened under her in public, and for the first time in either life, Elodie had no prepared expression waiting. Her mouth parted. No sound came out. Around her, the rivals who had worshipped her began stepping backward, as if guilt might be contagious only by distance. Tessa sobbed. She said it was allowed. Lena shouted, "You told us Mara was hiding the real notes." Maribel, revived and pale on a chair near the wall, whispered, "I only copied what Elodie gave us." The hall dissolved into accusations. Ms. Wren raised one hand, and security moved in with the quiet efficiency of people who had expected exactly this. "Candidates identified in the amber file distribution chain will be removed from today's examination pending disciplinary review," she announced. "Candidates who signed false declarations will be ineligible for this exam cycle." Elodie turned then, not to Ms. Wren, not to her crying friends, but to me. Her eyes found mine across the hall with a look so vicious it almost felt intimate. She had wanted my fear. I gave her nothing. The exam itself was almost peaceful, which felt obscene after the storm outside. We sat in Hall C, not Hall A, because the Academy moved cleared candidates through a side corridor while the flagged group was escorted to review rooms. My desk was near a window overlooking the courtyard. Through the glass, I could see parents gathering beyond the iron fence, phones in hand, rumors already spreading. I imagined Elodie's mother arriving in pearls, demanding explanations. I imagined Tessa's father calling trustees. I imagined the Academy website crashing under gossip before sunset. Then the proctor placed the exam booklet on my desk, and the world narrowed to paper, ink, and the clean terror of honest work. The first question was nothing like the amber file. It involved a revised public health directive, a procedural challenge, and a new case from the spring lecture series. Last year's notes would not merely fail to help. They would drag the answer in the wrong direction. I smiled before I could stop myself. Not because the others were trapped outside, but because I knew how to answer. Not perfectly, not magically, not with some reborn heroine's impossible brilliance. I knew because I had studied. I wrote slowly at first, then faster, building my response from current principles, facts, limits, and consequences. Halfway through, a memory tried to surface. Me in my first life, sitting in a disciplinary waiting room with nothing left to defend myself except the truth nobody wanted. I let the memory pass through me and kept writing. At the end of 3 hours, my hand cramped, my back ached, and my final paragraph was messier than I liked. But every word was mine. When the proctor called time, I placed my pen down and felt something inside me unclench that had been tight for 8 years across 2 lives. Nadia caught my eye from 2 rows over and grinned like someone who had survived a shipwreck with dry socks. Rowan looked stunned, exhausted, and quietly happy. Outside Hall C, the corridor was empty except for cleared candidates and staff.
No Elodie. No Tessa. No Maribel.
No golden table waiting to swallow me. Just the sound of footsteps moving forward. Disqualification did not happen with fireworks. It happened through email. That was another truth my first life had taught me. Institutions ruin people in calm language. At 5:46 p.m., every senior candidate received the notice. Following a preliminary integrity review, candidates found to have accessed, distributed, memorized, concealed, or falsely declared use of prohibited archived examination material have been disqualified from the current final examination cycle. Their scripts, where applicable, will not be marked. Their ranking eligibility is revoked pending full disciplinary hearing. Candidates who materially participated in distribution may face suspension or expulsion. The list was not attached, but names flew faster than official documents ever could. Tessa was disqualified. Lena was disqualified. Maribel was disqualified. Elodie was suspended immediately pending expulsion review. 12 others who had memorized the amber file phrases and signed false declarations were removed from merit consideration. 3 students who surrendered the material honestly before signing were allowed to defer. That detail mattered to me more than I expected. The academy had left a door open, and a few had taken it. Elodie had not. By evening, the courtyard filled with parents, lawyers, tears, and expensive cars idling under the plane trees. I watched from the library balcony while Nadia read messages aloud in a dramatic whisper. Elodie's mother says this is targeted. Tessa says Elodie manipulated everyone. Maribel says she thought sealed archive meant premium tutoring resource. Stop, I said, but I was laughing. Not kindly. Not cruelly either. Just laughing because the world had become absurd enough to breathe in. Then my phone buzzed with a private message from an unknown number. Do you think you won because you hid your notes? I stared at it for a long second. Another message arrived. You ruined everyone. My thumbs hovered over the screen. In my first life, I would have defended myself, explained, pleaded, tried to make a person committed to misunderstanding me see reason. This time, I took a screenshot, forwarded it to Ms. Wren, blocked the number, and turned my phone face down. Nadia saluted with a potato chip. Growth, she said. Character development. I leaned back against the balcony rail and let the evening air cool my face. The hearing was scheduled for Friday because scandals hate weekends. I was not required to attend, but Ms. Wren asked if I would provide a statement about my resignation, access revocation, and prior concerns. In my first life, I had walked into the hearing room as an accused girl, shaking so hard the water in my paper cup trembled. This time, I entered through the side door as a witness. The difference was almost too large for my body to understand. The room was the same. Long walnut table, academy crest, 3 committee members, pitcher of water, box of tissues placed where guilty families could reach it. Elodie sat across from them in a navy dress, her hair ribbon gone, her parents flanking her like lawyers even though 2 actual lawyers sat behind them. She did not look at me when I entered. Her mother did. The look was surgical. Ms. Wren guided me through the timeline. I explained that I had served as volunteer note coordinator, revoked access before any prohibited file circulated, resigned officially, preserved logs, and reported concern without distributing material. The committee displayed my folder history on the screen. The last shared version contained only my original summaries.
No amber frases. No examiner anotations. No hidden pages.
Then they displayed Elodie's chat logs, her attachments, her deleted message recovery, her instruction not to forward, and the scan matches from students' flashcards. Her father objected twice. The chair overruled him twice. Finally, Elodie's lawyer suggested that my refusal to share notes created academic distress that pushed the cohort toward unsafe resources. For 1 second, the old guilt reached for me with familiar fingers. Then I remembered the cafeteria, the crown on my locker, the cupcakes, the laundry room, the sentence someone like you. I leaned toward the microphone. My notes were my work, I said. No one was entitled to them. Refusing to provide free labor did not force anyone to use banned material. The room went quiet. The sentence sat there, plain and indestructible. Even the committee chair stopped writing. Elodie looked at me then. Not angry this time. Afraid. Because she knew maybe for the first time, that I was not defending myself against her story anymore. I was telling mine. The final decision arrived before sunset. Elodie Vane was expelled for possession and distribution of prohibited archive material, false declaration, coercive academic conduct, and attempted evidence destruction. Tessa, Lena, Maribel, and 9 others were disqualified from the final examination cycle and removed from the merit list. Their disciplinary outcomes varied depending on cooperation. The Academy issued a formal statement about academic integrity without naming students, which meant everyone named them twice as loudly. The golden table in the cafeteria disappeared overnight. Not physically, of course. The chairs remained. The sunlight still touched the polished surface, but nobody gathered there the same way. Power is strange like that. Sometimes it looks permanent until one email proves it was only seating arrangement. Results came 2 weeks later. I did not rank first. That surprised people more than it surprised me. Rebirth had not made me a genius. It had made me careful. I ranked 7th, high enough for the public policy internship I wanted, high enough to keep my scholarship, high enough to walk through the academy gates without lowering my head. Nadia ranked 15th and screamed so loudly in the dorm corridor that a first-year dropped her laundry basket. Rowan ranked 9th and sent me a message that said simply, "Current syllabus worked." I printed my result and pinned it above my desk, not because it was perfect, but because it was clean.
No stolen archive.
No shared folder. No Golden Girls permission. Just my name, my score, my future. That night, while the campus celebrated and mourned in unequal parts, I walked to the old study room where I had once built notes for people who called exploitation friendship. I opened a new notebook. On the first page, I wrote 3 rules. 1. Generosity without boundaries becomes evidence for people who want to use you. 2. A shortcut is only a shortcut if it still leads to the right place. 3. Never confuse being needed with being loved. Then I paused, because a 4th rule had begun forming quietly beneath the others, gentler and harder to admit. 4. Share with people who respect the word no. Months later, after internships began and the scandal turned into a cautionary lecture for younger cohorts, I saw Elodie once more. It was raining, the kind of thin gray rain that makes the whole city look erased. I was leaving the courthouse annex with a folder of policy briefs under my coat when I spotted her across the street outside a private tutoring center. Her hair was shorter. Her face looked sharper. She held an umbrella with a broken rib and a stack of flyers advertising exam coaching she was no longer credentialed to provide. For a moment, the old story tried to wake, the villain ruined, the heroine triumphant, the final scene begging for a cruel line. But real life, even a second life, is less tidy than revenge titles. Elodie saw me. I saw her. Neither of us crossed the street. Maybe she hated me. Maybe she blamed me. Maybe she had begun, in some private, painful corner of herself, to understand that I had not destroyed her. I had simply stepped aside and let her chosen road reach its destination. A bus passed between us, spraying water over the curb. When it cleared, she was looking down at her flyers, not at me. I walked on. My phone buzzed with a message from Nadia asking if I had finished the internship application draft and whether I was still refusing to share my color-coded template because, quote, friendship should include stationary benefits. I smiled so hard a stranger glanced at me. I typed back, "You can look at it beside me, but you can't take the file." She replied with 12 dramatic crying emojis and 1 thumbs up. That was love, I decided. Not the kind that demanded proof until you were empty, but the kind that rolled its eyes at your boundaries and respected them anyway. The new cohort asked me to speak at orientation the following year. Not officially about the scandal, of course. Institutions prefer lessons without names. My topic was listed as independent study and ethical collaboration, which sounded so boring half the students arrived expecting punishment. I stood at the front of Lecture Hall B with my hair pinned back, my old academy blazer replaced by a courthouse intern badge, and looked out at rows of anxious faces, waiting to be told how to survive. Some reminded me of myself in my first life, hungry to belong, terrified of falling behind, ready to confuse usefulness with worth. Some reminded me of Elodie, polished, restless, already measuring who could be converted into advantage. I did not tell them I had died. I did not tell them I had lived the cost of one shared folder twice. I simply held up a notebook. "These are mine," I said. "That does not make me selfish. It makes me responsible for my own work. Collaboration is when people build together. Exploitation is when one person bleeds quietly so everyone else can call the room healthy." A few students shifted in their seats. Good. Comfort was overrated. I told them to cite sources, verify updates, avoid sealed archives, protect access logs, never sign declarations they did not understand, and never accept material from someone who said, "Don't forward this, but memorize it." Then I closed the notebook and looked toward the back row, where sunlight cut across the desks like a clean page. "And if someone stops sharing notes with you," I said, "your first question should not be, 'How do I get them back?' It should be, 'Why did I need someone else's work so badly that their boundary felt like an attack?'" No one clapped immediately. That was how I knew they had heard me. Applause can be reflex. Silence can be understanding. After the lecture, a first-year girl waited near the podium while everyone else filed out. She had ink on her fingers, a crooked braid, and the exhausted look of someone already doing too much for people who praised her only when she produced. She hugged a notebook to her chest and said, "What if they hate me when I stop?" I knew exactly what she meant. Not notes only. Favors. Summaries. Emotional labor. Being the reliable one. Being the free safety net. Being loved in the shape of a resource. I wanted to give her a perfect answer, something polished enough to fit in a quote card, but the truth was rougher. "Some of them will," I said. Her face fell. I softened my voice. "But the ones who only liked what they could take from you were already gone. Stopping just makes the room honest." She looked down at her notebook for a long moment. Then she nodded once, slowly, as if placing something heavy on a shelf. When she left, I sat alone in the empty lecture hall and let the quiet settle around me. In my first life, I had thought vindication meant everyone finally understanding my innocence. In my second, I learned it could be smaller and stronger, a clean record, a locked folder, a chosen friend sitting beside me instead of a crowd feeding from my hands, a young girl hearing the word no before she paid for yes with her whole future. Outside, the academy bell rang for afternoon classes. The sound echoed through the hall, bright and ordinary. I packed my notebook into my bag, checked that the zipper was closed, and walked out without leaving a single page behind.